I'm sure the town will be glad to accommodate you. Just remember one thing. Keep your face to the camera, so we'll see who's smiling at us through the tar and feathers.
Remember when TV comfort food meant a half hour in Hooterville, a slow little train called the Cannonball, and a widowed mom trying to keep the Shady Rest Hotel and her 3 daughters from complete chaos? Petticoat Junction was that show. Bea Benaderet as Kate Bradley, Edgar Buchanan scheming and snoozing as Uncle Joe, and the Bradley girls, Billy Joe, Bobby Joe, and Betty Joe, became familiar faces for Gen X through endless reruns. It all started back in 1963 when CBS looked at the runaway success of the Beverly Hillbillies and said, let's do that again. Petticoat Junction rolled on to the schedule that fall and stuck around all the way to 1970. 7 seasons, 222 episodes of train whistles and porch sittin'. Today, we're going back to the Shady Rest for 15 facts you didn't know about Petticoat Junction. The casting close calls, the tragic losses, and the little details you probably missed even after a dozen reruns. Now, before we jump in, hit like and subscribe to Remember When for more deep dives into the shows you grew up with, and share this video with a friend who still hums the Petticoat Junction theme under their breath. Now, let's get into the countdown with number 15. Petticoat Junction debuted as the 4th most watched show in America. Get this. Petticoat Junction didn't just debut to decent ratings, it landed as the 4th most watched show in the entire country.
Let's back up to the part where we're turning the Shady Rest into a maternity home.
This is the greatest money-making scheme I ever had. Do you realize how many nervous, expectant fathers there are who'd be happy to pay big money to have their wives stay here, knowing the finest medical cares with an easy shotgun call?
Not 4th on CBS, not 4th in its time slot, 4th period. Let that sink in. A show about a hotel in a fictional town called Hooterville somehow beat almost every other program on television. Now look, by September of 1963, America was already hooked on rural comedy thanks to the Beverly Hillbillies, Paul Henning's other massive hit. So when Petticoat Junction premiered with more small-town charm, cozy family dynamics, and zero cynicism, viewers didn't just tune in, they committed. The show clicked instantly. By the end of its first season, Henning had 2 shows in the top 5. The man basically owned rural America's living rooms every Tuesday night. And here's the kicker, Petticoat Junction stayed in the top 20 for its first 4 years. Week after week, millions of Americans chose stories about the Shady Rest Hotel over spy dramas, crime shows, and big city escapades. The show's popularity was so undeniable that CBS literally expanded the Hooterville universe with Green Acres in 1965. Why mess with a formula that's printing money anyway? At its peak, this show wasn't just appointment television, it was comfort food in sitcom form. Paul Henning had cracked the code, giving people warmth, humor, and a place they wished they existed, and they showed up every single week. Number 14, Sharon Tate was cast as Billy Joe until sponsors saw her photos. Now, here's a wild piece of Petticoat Junction history. One that stars Sharon Tate, a role that she almost played, and a sponsor that absolutely panicked. Back in the spring of 1963, when Paul Henning was casting his brand new sitcom, Sharon Tate was hired to play Billy Joe Bradley, the eldest Bradley sister. Contracts were signed, wardrobe was fitted, there was even a full cast photo shoot with Tate right there as one of the Bradley daughters. Then, Procter & Gamble found out Sharon Tate had previously posed for semi-nude photographs in Europe, shots that would later show up in Playboy. And in 1963, when sponsors basically ran the networks, P&G lost their minds. They didn't just object, they threatened to yank their entire sponsorship unless Tate was fired. So, at the last possible moment, Henning had to recast the role. Sharon Tate was out, and Janine Riley stepped in as Billy Joe for the first 2 seasons.
I gotta figure out what I'm gonna feed those stockholders.
But Mom, I have a date.
With the dishes. You wash, you dry, you stack.
But Tate's story didn't end there. Filmways, the company behind Petticoat Junction, the Beverly Hillbillies, and Mr. Ed, kept her under contract. Martin Ransohoff, the studio head, felt she wasn't quite ready for a major TV role and guided her towards smaller parts to build confidence. That's how she ended up with a recurring role as Janet Trigo, the secretary at the Commerce Bank, appearing in 15 episodes of the Beverly Hillbillies. Talk about sliding doors. One sponsor freakout changed everything and cost Petticoat Junction what could have been one of its most memorable casting choices ever. Number 13, 3 rejected titles before Petticoat Junction. Naming a TV show is harder than it looks, especially when you're trying to capture small-town charm, railroad life, and 3 daughters who keep leaving their petticoats on the water tower. Before Paul Henning settled on the now iconic Petticoat Junction, he tried out several titles that, well, let's just say they tell a very different story. First up was Ozark Widow, a title that screamed depressing drama louder than lighthearted sitcom. Sure, it was accurate. Kate Bradley was a widow running a hotel and raising 3 girls, but come on. Ozark Widow sounds like something you'd watch while eating ice cream alone on a Tuesday night, not a show you'd gather the whole family around for laughs. Next was Whistle Stop, a nod to the Cannonball Express that rolled through every episode. For the uninitiated, a whistle stop is one of those tiny stations where the train only slows down if someone actually flags it down. It's a cute concept, sure, but the title made the show sound like a documentary about trains, not a sitcom about a family running a hotel. It had the railroad angle covered, but zero hint of the warmth or comedy waiting inside the shady rest. And then, darn tootin'. Yeah, that was a real contender. It was folksy, loud, and leaning all the way into the rural slang Paul Henning loved to write. It would have fit right in next to the Beverly Hillbillies, but it also risked making the show sound like one long cornpone punchline. Not exactly the vibe for a series trying to balance humor with heart. In the end, Henning went with Petticoat Junction. It was whimsical, visual, and impossible to forget. The title played off the show's opening bit with the girls hanging their petticoats on the water tower, and it perfectly captured the lighthearted family vibe he was going for. Honestly, it's hard to imagine America tuning in every week for Ozark Widow, but Petticoat Junction? Darn tootin', that was the right choice. Number 12, the opening credits had a cheeky joke hiding in plain sight.
Come ride the little train that is rolling down the track.
Petticoat Junction was a wholesome family sitcom, but Paul Henning wasn't above slipping in a little winking humor for the grown-ups. And if you ever wondered why that opening sequence stuck in your memory, it's because the show's most famous visual gag and even the theme song were designed to work on 2 levels.
Forget about your cares, it is time to relax at the junction.
Let's start with the imagery. The Bradley sisters taking a bath in the shady rest water tower with their petticoats hanging neatly on a line outside. As kids, we bought it. Just folksy country living with a creative bathroom setup.
Lots of curves, you bet, and even more when you get.
But to adult viewers in the 60s, well, that was a mild bit of TV flirtation served with a smile. Seeing ladies' undergarments fluttering in the breeze during primetime was about as risque as network censors allowed back then. It wasn't scandalous, it was just a playful little "don't worry, mom and dad, this one's for you." Now, technically, and Paul Henning would swear up and down, those curves referred to the winding bends of the C&FW Railroad. Totally innocent. Sure, Paul, and we're sure it's just a coincidence that 3 attractive young women happen to be on screen right after the "lots of curves, you bet" line. This was classic Paul Henning. Clean enough for the family, clever enough for adults to catch the joke, and tame enough to keep CBS censors from bursting into flames. A little wink, a little wordplay, and a whole lot of charm. That's Petticoat Junction.
Junction, Petticoat Junction.
Number 11, the iconic train was basically a main character. Now, if you watched Petticoat Junction as a kid, you probably remember the Shady Rest Hotel, the 3 Bradley sisters, and the train. Oh yeah, that train. The Hooterville Cannonball wasn't just a prop, it was practically the show's 4th lead. And here's the wild part. That adorable little steam engine was real. The producers used actual footage of Sierra number 3. Yeah, the same Hollywood workhorse that later popped up in High Noon, Unforgiven, and Back to the Future 3. So if you ever thought, hey, that train looks familiar, well, congratulations, your TV memory is officially elite and we salute you. But the magic wasn't just in the engine, it was in the ridiculous premise built around it. On the show, the Cannonball didn't follow a schedule so much as vibes. The engineer and conductor would just stop the train whenever they felt like it to fish, to chat, to grab a sandwich, and apparently nobody complained. The whole line was so isolated it wasn't even connected to the rest of the railway system. You weren't taking the Cannonball to anywhere, you were taking it because it was there. The show leaned into the absurdity. A functioning hotel whose only transportation was a vintage steam engine operated by guys who treated punctuality as a suggestion. It made Hooterville feel like its own little world of charming, ridiculous, and completely disconnected from reality. And for viewers, the Cannonball delivered pure nostalgia. That whistle, that steam, that footage of a real locomotive chugging through the hills, it gave the show a warmth that animated trains or cheap models never could. The Cannonball wasn't just transportation, it was Petticoat Junction. Number 10. The Shady Rest was based on a real hotel. Petticoat Junction may have felt like pure small-town fantasy, but the heart of the show came straight from real life. The Shady Rest Hotel wasn't just a cute TV invention, it was inspired by creator Paul Henning's own family stories, thanks to his wife Ruth. When Ruth Henning was a kid, she spent summers visiting her grandparents in Eldon, Missouri, where they owned and operated the Burris Hotel, sometimes called the Rock Island Hotel. It wasn't fancy, but it had two things going for it: home-cooked meals that could feed a small army, and prices so low that traveling salesmen probably checked in just to catch their breath. Sound familiar? Just like the Shady Rest, the Burris Hotel sat right beside the railroad tracks, the Rock Island line. Trains weren't background noise, they were a way of life. Guests, gossip, and half the day's drama arrived by locomotive, which is exactly why the train became such a beloved character on Petticoat Junction. Paul Henning wasn't shy about where the inspiration came from either. The hotel, the train, the whole setup, it was straight from Ruth's childhood summers, and from stories passed down by her mother, Alice, who grew up in that world. The show's cozy, homespun charm wasn't dreamed up in a writer's room, it was lifted directly from real life. The real Burris Hotel is long gone, torn down decades ago, but every detail, the porch sitting, the train whistles, the sense that time moved a little bit slower there, that got immortalized in Petticoat Junction. Not a bad way to keep a family memory alive. Number 9, Uncle Joe was played by a former dentist who was barely older than Kate. Uncle Joe Carson may have been the laziest man in Hooterville, but the actor who played him, Edgar Buchanan, had one of the most surprising backstories in the entire cast. Before Buchanan ever schemed from the Shady Rest porch, he had a completely different career with a lot more Novocaine. Yeah, Uncle Joe was a dentist, well, technically an oral surgeon. Buchanan graduated from the North Pacific Dental College, now part of Oregon Health and Science University, and he ran a full dental practice in Eugene, Oregon with his wife, who was also a dentist. This man went from pulling teeth to pulling laughs. Not a bad pivot. His patients happened to be involved in local theater, and Buchanan caught the acting bug through them. By the late 1930s, he made the boldest move imaginable for a married dentist with a thriving business. He packed up, headed to Hollywood, and never looked back. Within a few years, he was everywhere, playing kindly judges, small-town codgers, and rambling old-timers with more stories than sense. On Petticoat Junction, Uncle Joe was Kate Bradley's uncle, the lovable freeloader who spent most of his time napping in his favorite porch chair and cooking up half-brained get-rich-quick schemes. The theme song even calls him out.
And that's Uncle Joe, he's a moving kind of slow at the junction.
Slow? Well, that's putting it nicely. The man treated work like it was contagious, but here's the twist. Edgar Buchanan was only 3 years older than Bea Benaderet. She was born in 1906, he was born in 1903. 3 years, that's it. Sure, uncles can absolutely be close in age to their nieces, that's just how family trees work sometimes, but most viewers assumed Uncle Joe was a full generation older than Kate. He looked like he'd been sitting in that porch chair since the Coolidge administration, and audiences bought it completely. And here's the kicker. While Uncle Joe was the laziest man in Hooterville, Edgar Buchanan was the complete opposite in real life. Number 8, the Shady Rest no-name dog became a Hollywood superstar. Now, you might remember the scruffy little dog at the Shady Rest, the loyal, bright-eyed pup who stole scenes without ever saying a word. On Petticoat Junction, he never had an official name. Characters just called him Dog or Boy, like he was simply part of the scenery. But behind the scenes, that little terrier was Higgins, and he'd go on to become one of the biggest animal stars in Hollywood. The dog became a permanent fixture at the Shady Rest after following Betty Jo home in the second season. While everyone loved him, the show leaned into a running gag. Curmudgeonly, Uncle Joe would constantly complain about the flea-bitten hound eating them out of the house and home. Of course, Uncle Joe griped about everything, so the dog fit right in. Off-screen though, Edgar Buchanan adored Higgins. The two became an inseparable pair on set. Higgins was discovered in a shelter by legendary trainer Frank Inn, who immediately saw something special in him, and Inn trained him to perform incredibly complex tricks, nodding yes and no, coughing on cue, untying shoelaces, even playing dead with award-worthy commitment. On the Petticoat Junction set, Higgins became a quiet professional, hitting his marks better than some human co-stars.
Roll over.
Any dog can do that. I'd like to see him walk on his hind legs.
Mom, look at that.
And then came Benji. Years after Petticoat Junction ended, Higgins landed the starring role in the 1974 film Benji. And suddenly, that nameless dog from Hooterville was a movie star. His expressive little face and uncanny ability to convey emotion made him an instant hit. Benji became a global box office success, launching a franchise and turning a shelter rescue into a household name. But here's the best part. Edgar Buchanan came out of semi-retirement to co-star in Benji alongside his old friend Higgins. After years of grumbling about that flea-bitten hound on TV, Buchanan got to share the screen with him one last time. It was both of their final film roles, a perfect Hollywood reunion story. Alright, really quick, we're going to take a pause because I want you to tell us in the comments which Bradley sister was your favorite. Was it Billy Joe, Bobby Joe, or Betty Joe? Now, while you're down there, why don't you hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss our next trip and deep dive into retro TV. Number 7, Sam Drucker was the glue that held the Hooterville universe together. Now, long before TV executives started throwing around phrases like expanded universe, CBS accidentally created one with 3 rural sitcoms, a general store, and a whole lot of cornfields, and holding it all together was Sam Drucker. Now, if you watched any of Paul Henning's rural sitcoms, you definitely met Sam. Frank Cady didn't just play Sam on Petticoat Junction, he played him everywhere. He's the only actor to appear regularly in all 3 shows of what fans now call the Hooterville trilogy. It all started with the Beverly Hillbillies in 1962.
And this goes on all the time.
She only comes home to change clothes. You fellas.
Your whole family's going a lot. I tried to call here for pretty near a week.
Then Petticoat Junction in 1963.
Could I interest you in a pound of bacon? 15 cents. 10 cents? 5 cents? Free bacon. Free bacon.
I'll take a couple of pounds of free bacon.
Get out of here, you backstabber.
And finally Green Acres in 1965, and Sam was there for all of it. Sam Drucker ran the general store and the post office, and delivered the mail, and served as Justice of the Peace. And on Green Acres, he somehow also edited the Hooterville World Intelligencer. The man had more jobs than the entire population of Hooterville combined. If the town needed it done, Sam did it, probably because no one else would. And unlike Uncle Joe, who treated work like a suggestion, Sam was actually reliable. He was the grounded, no-nonsense businessman who kept Hooterville running while everyone around him spiraled into chaos. Sam had the wisdom to see the best in people, even when those people were objectively ridiculous. That said, Sam wasn't completely normal. He had his quirks, like saving lost mail all year and handing it out in one big batch annually, but compared to everyone else in Hooterville, that barely registered. And that's why he became the anchor of the entire shared universe. Number 6, Petticoat Junction had so many Bradley sisters, it was almost a matching game. Now, if you've ever watched Petticoat Junction and thought, wait, that's a completely different actress, you're not imagining things. The Bradley sisters went through more recasts than most soap operas. Over 7 seasons, 6 different actresses played the 3 daughters. If you're doing the math, that's an average of 1 recast per season. Not great, Petticoat Junction. Let's start with Billy Joe, the oldest sister. She began as Janine Riley, the charming, flirtatious bombshell of the group. However, when Riley left after 2 seasons, she was replaced by Gunilla Hutton. And when Hutton moved on, the role went to Meredith McRae, who played Billy Joe for the rest of the series. McRae completely transformed the character though. Where Riley and Hutton played Billy Joe as the boy-crazy flirt, McRae brought maturity, independence, and actual career ambition. She was also an accomplished singer. Her father was Gordon McRae, so the show leaned hard into Billy Joe's dream of becoming a professional singer, incorporating musical numbers into later seasons. McRae brought sophistication and glamour that redefined the character entirely. Then there's Bobby Joe, the middle sister, at least in terms of personality. Pat Waddell played her for the first 2 seasons as the quiet, bookish good girl.
I know. Why don't we call him Henry? He looks like Billy's boyfriend, Henry Brewster. Well, they both have the same soft brown eyes, and their hair comes down over their collars the same way.
When Waddell left to pursue a music career, Laurie Saunders stepped in and transformed Bobby Joe into a bubbly, cheerful scatterbrain. Fans rolled with it, and the bubbly version stuck for the rest of the series. And through all this casting chaos, one sister stayed rock solid. Betty Jo, played by Linda K. Henning. She was the only Bradley daughter to appear in all 7 seasons without being recast. Her tomboy energy, her love for the Hooterville Cannonball, and her grounded presence helped keep the Bradley family dynamic intact no matter how many actresses cycled through the shady rest. Her consistency wasn't just talent or luck, though there is one detail worth mentioning. Linda K. Henning was the daughter of Paul Henning, the show's creator and producer. But here's the thing. She deliberately auditioned under the name Linda Kaye to avoid any claims of nepotism. She earned the role on her own merit, and once she was cast, she became the one constant in a revolving door of Bradley sisters. And in true Hollywood fashion, her story had a romantic twist. Linda eventually married Mike Minor, who played her on-screen love interest, pilot Steve Elliott. Betty Jo didn't just get the guy on the show, she got him in real life too. So if you ever lose track of which Bradley sister is which in different seasons, don't worry, even longtime fans get confused. Number 5, it took Hollywood way too long to give Bea Benaderet her own show. Now, when Petticoat Junction premiered, critics said Bea Benaderet had finally become a star, and honestly, it was about time. By 1963, Bea had already racked up more radio and TV work than most actors do in a lifetime. She wasn't just busy, she was Busy Bea, the nickname the press gave her after more than 1,000 combined episode appearances. Before she ever set foot in Hooterville, Bea was everywhere. She spent decades playing the hilarious neighbor, the scene-stealing sidekick, and the character actress every producer trusted. She was even the original voice of Betty Rubble on the Flintstones.
How cold can cold cuts get?
Giving the character her warmth, charm, and signature giggle during the show's first 4 seasons. And Paul Henning knew exactly what she could do. He cast her as Cousin Pearl, Jethro's ambitious, sharp-tongued mother, and her performance was such a knockout that Henning created Petticoat Junction specifically with her in mind. She didn't just earn the lead, she proved she could carry the whole show. Now, here's the kicker, Bea never expected to be a star. She'd spent so long playing supporting roles that when CBS picked up Petticoat Junction, she told a reporter practically glowing, "Isn't it nice? After all these years, golly, my own show." Once she landed the part, she threw herself into it. Bea said leading a series came with a feeling of responsibility. She studied her castmates, refined her timing, and shaped Kate Bradley into the steady, warm heart of the Shady Rest. Hollywood took notice. She earned a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame before Petticoat Junction even existed, won a Genie Award in 1966, and was celebrated for her mastery of dialects and effortless comedic timing. Bea Benaderet wasn't just the mother of Hooterville, she was one of the hardest working, versatile performers of her era, and Petticoat Junction finally gave her the lead role she'd been ready for all along. Number 4, Bea's illness changed the show forever. For the first 4.5 seasons, Bea Benaderet was the heart and soul of Petticoat Junction. As Kate Bradley, she held the Shady Rest together with warmth, humor, and a steady moral compass. So when Benaderet became seriously ill in late 1967, it didn't just affect the cast, it changed the entire course of the show. During production of season 5, a spot on Benaderet's lung, first discovered in 1963, had grown. She delayed surgery until the show's November hiatus, and on November 26 of 1967, doctors discovered the tumor was inoperable. She underwent 6 weeks of radiation treatment and missed 10 episodes. The show explained Kate was out of town and temporary mother figures stepped in. Aunt Helen, played by Rosemary DeCamp.
Look at that, L2250370, L2250370.
And Cousin May, played by Shirley Mitchell.
Well, I gotta be going.
But viewers noticed. Without Kate at the center, the Bradley sisters felt unanchored, and the warm family dynamic that defined the show started to slip. Benaderet returned in March of 1968 for the season 5 finale, Kate's Homecoming, appearing noticeably thinner and weaker, but determined to finish the season.
This is Bradley.
Oh, honey, it's so good to see you.
Welcome home.
Thank you.
Then, in the fall of 1968, her cancer returned. She managed to film only 2 full episodes and 1 brief scene at the beginning of season 6 before becoming too ill to continue. Her final appearance was in The Valley Has a Baby, where only her voice was used with a body double filling in for rear shots. Bea Benaderet died on October 13th of 1968 at the age of 62 from lung cancer and pneumonia. The show had to figure out how to move forward without the woman who'd been its foundation. The solution was June Lockhart as Dr. Janet Craig, known for Lassie and Lost in Space. Lockhart brought a polished, modern presence to the Shady Rest. Her character wasn't written as a replacement mother, she was more like a wise, worldly family friend who moved to Hooterville to open up her medical practice and rented a room at the hotel. She offered guidance and stability to the Bradley girls, but it was a different kind of relationship. Less maternal warmth and more supportive mentorship. Dr. Craig helped the show continue, but she couldn't replicate the grounded motherly center Kate Bradley had provided. It was a turning point that marked the beginning of Petticoat Junction's final chapter. Without Bea Benaderet, the show simply wasn't the same, and the audience knew it. Number 3, Petticoat Junction was part of CBS's Rural Purge. Petticoat Junction didn't end because people stopped watching, It ended because CBS stopped wanting the people who were watching it. In 1970, the network launched what became one of the most infamous shakeups in TV history, something critics later called the Rural Purge. Here's what happened. By the late 60s, CBS was stacked with hits: the Beverly Hillbillies, Green Acres, Mayberry RFD, Lassie, and of course, Petticoat Junction. These shows pulled in massive audiences and dominated the ratings, but there was a problem. The network discovered that the people watching them weren't the ones advertisers wanted. The core audience skewed older and rural. Advertisers wanted younger, urban viewers with disposable income, the holy grail 18 to 49 demographic. When Fred Silverman took over programming in 1970, he decided the entire network needed a modern makeover. His solution? Cancel almost every rural, small town, or old-fashioned show on the schedule, no matter how successful it was. And he moved fast. Between 1970 and 1971, CBS canceled nearly all of its rural shows in one brutal sweep. Shows that were still pulling in solid ratings were gone. Shows that had been on the air for years with loyal fan bases, canceled. The television landscape changed almost overnight. Petticoat Junction, already wounded by Bea Benaderet's death and sliding in the ratings, was one of the first to go.
I wouldn't have thought to check our files and discover that our good friends still own this 10-foot strip of right-of-way.
Well, I didn't mention it for that reason. I mentioned it relative to being stuck with them Tommy Hawks.
Its final episode aired in April of 1970, the beginning of the end for the entire Hooterville universe. In their place came a new wave of relevant, urban, socially conscious sitcoms: All in the Family, The Mary Tyler Moore Show, and eventually MASH, shows that reflected cultural tensions and modern city life, not train whistles and porch rocking chairs. The Rural Purge didn't just cancel a bunch of beloved shows, it ended an era, and Petticoat Junction was one of the first victims of a decision that completely reshaped American television. Number 2, Bea Benaderet was Lucille Ball's first choice to play Ethel Mertz. Now here's the ultimate what if in classic TV history. One twist of fate that could have changed both I Love Lucy and Petticoat Junction forever. Before she became the heart of Hooterville, Bea Benaderet came this close to landing one of the most famous roles in sitcom history, Ethel Mertz. Lucille Ball and Bea Benaderet had already perfected their comedic chemistry on the radio show My Favorite Husband, where Benaderet played Iris Atterbury, the best friend. When Ball started developing I Love Lucy, Bea was Ball's first and only choice. Lucy was reportedly beside herself when she found out that Bea was unavailable. Bea was already locked into a contract to play Blanche Morton on the television adaptation of the George Burns and Gracie Allen show. Contractually, she couldn't leave, not even for what would become the biggest sitcom in television history. So the role went to Vivian Vance, and the rest became legend.
Did you call up Howard Thompson? He isn't marked off. Yeah, he's busy Monday night, babysitting with his grandson. Oh, yeah.
But here's the twist. Missing out on Ethel Mertz didn't derail Bea's career. It propelled her into different kind of stardoms. She continued to shine on Burns and Allen, then became the original voice of Betty Rubble on The Flintstones, and eventually the beloved Kate Bradley on Petticoat Junction. It's one of those Hollywood crossroads that leaves fans wondering, if Bea Benaderet had become Ethel Mertz, would we ever have met Kate Bradley? Would Petticoat Junction, or even the entire Hooterville universe, exist the way that we know it? One thing's for sure, television history would look very, very different. Number 1, the Hooterville shows were filmed feet apart. One of the reasons the Hooterville universe felt so seamless wasn't just the writing, it was the geography. Literal walk across the soundstage geography. Petticoat Junction and Beverly Hillbillies were filmed so close together that the actors could practically wave at each other between scenes. Both shows were shot at General Service Studios in Hollywood, now called Sunset Las Palmas Studios, a major TV production hub in the 1960s. And Paul Henning, the mastermind behind both series, took full advantage of the setup. The Beverly Hillbillies filmed primarily on stages 4 and 7, the Clampett Mansion, the Cement Pond, the cabin set. Petticoat Junction used stages 1 and 2 for the Shady Rest Hotel interiors, but here's the kicker, both shows shared stage 7. That's where the Hooterville Cannonball mock-up, the depot, and Sam Drucker's store lived. And Green Acres? Stage 5 right in the middle of it all. This wasn't an accident, it was brilliant planning. If an actor needed to hop from one show to the other, they didn't need a driver or a shuttle van, they just walked a few feet across the soundstage floor. Bea Benaderet could finish a scene as Cousin Pearl on the Beverly Hillbillies and step directly onto her Petticoat Junction set moments later. It made crossovers effortless and gave the shared universe an authenticity you couldn't fake. The actors worked side by side, the crews overlapped, and the whole setup created a kind of small town energy behind the scenes. Exactly the atmosphere audiences saw on screen. The shared world of Hooterville wasn't just clever writing, it was a logistical setup that made crossovers as easy as walking next door. And there you have it, 15 weird and wild facts about Petticoat Junction. Which one surprised you the most? Which one did we miss? Let us know in the comment section below. And hey, hit like if this stirred up some memories for you, subscribe for more trips back to the shows we grew up on, and share this video with someone who used to race to the TV when they heard that train whistle. Until next time, all aboard, because this is Remember When.